Well, hi everyone and welcome back to Dad's Shed. This is a bit different, especially different to the last series of 4 videos which worked out somewhere close to 4 hours. This one was a sort of an emergency job for me. Now, some of you may have seen a video I did a little while ago regarding some work on the car. And I'll explain the car. It's a 2007 Jaguar 2.7 litre diesel. And while I was away on holiday recently, somebody pointed out that there was a bit of an issue with it. And that issue was that there was a puffing noise coming from the engine, which was identified by this specialist as being a leaking fuel injection seal. So I decided I needed to do something about that when I got home. So last week I started to look at it and suddenly realised that it wasn't quite as simple as it appeared, and as a lot of videos indicate. And the main problem was that the injectors on this particular Jaguar do not have anywhere that you can attach a slide hammer to. And obviously if they've been leaking, they tend to get guns all around and they stick. There is a special Jaguar tool for it, which you can buy commercially, and there are a couple of companies who make their version of it. But this was a Friday. I made a couple of phone calls, and yes, they could get hold of one. It will take 5 days, and my car is out of commission. And it would cost in the region of £120, so $175, something like that. So I had a quick look at what it was and decided there was absolutely no reason I couldn't go off and make my own. And the nice thing about this is that this is some rather unpleasant, very scrap steel that I obtained, or was given to me a while ago. God only knows what it is. It just doesn't like being turned or anything. It certainly doesn't like being parted off. But I had some of this, so I roughly worked out the dimensions from what I could see, and spent a couple of hours in the workshop modifying a couple of 8mm bolts that I happen to have here, using some scrap steel and making some long plain studs that will go into the positioning of the hold down bolts for the injector. And the whole idea of these is that you screw this into the engine block where the hold down bolts would go. You slide that over the top like that, then twist it so that the eccentric foot engages in a slot in the bottom of the injector, and you then tighten that up, which pushes this out, or pushes down on the stud and pulls the injector out of the block. And you need 2 of those. So a couple of hours work on Friday afternoon making those, finishing them on Saturday morning. Saturday afternoon I went to the car, pulled the injector out using these, cleaned it up, put a new seal in, put it all back together again, and by 4 o'clock on Saturday the job was done. The total cost to me was a couple of hours work and a bit of thinking, and a little bit of electric for the shed, and it saved me about £120 in the cost of buying the tool to do the job. So very simple, quite easy realistically, and I thought you might find it interesting to see something a lot smaller than my last project in Dad's Shed. So I've got a 6.8mm drill in here. I'm going to drill in 40mm and then tap for 8mm. Okay, so that's tapped through there. Clearance hole at 6.1mm. So I need to make up a pusher to go in between 6.1 and 6.8, and then I can use an 8mm bolt just to push that down. So that's the next move. Before I do that, I'm going to put this on the Myford, put this in a 4-jaw chuck and offset it so I can do an eccentric ring so that it is full 20mm on one side, or sticks out 2.5mm on one side and is flush the other side. So that's the next move on the Myford. So that's been turned eccentrically on the Myford. So that should now sit down on the 6mm stud, and then that will turn around and lock in to the lifting part of the injector. That's the theory. Set the dead stop. Don't really need it, but I'm trying to get used to using it so that when I do need it, it's there for me. Okay. .11. Let's just take that down a little bit. I don't think that's on centre line. I think it's very, very slightly high. Yeah, that will do. 5.98, so I can live with that. Let's take that out, just cut that off. Can't be bothered to part it. And I'm just going to put a thread on the end there. What I can do while I'm doing this, I can do the other end much the same. Okay, what we got here, this is the piece of steel I've just turned down from 1/4 inch to 6mm, and I'm using one of my homemade tailstock die holders just to run down that down. So I'll drop this down speedwise. Two-speed motor on this, so down to the lowest speed, and some Triple X on the end. Bye.
Bye. Let's go get a drink.
Hold on a minute. Right. Right. Go on then. Have fun. Right, that's the thread. About 25mm long. Nice and clean. Right, so that's good. So all I need to do now is swap this around. Take that to there. Then more cutting compound. I know this is old-fashioned stuff, but it does seem to do the job. Stop that back access off of there. Okay, that's the other end done. So all I've got to do now, drop this out, cut them off, put them back in here, just slightly chamfer and smooth the end out. So I'll be back in a couple of minutes with that. So what we've got here are two screws, for want of a better term. I've got to slot the tops where I've just rounded them off. They fit inside there, and then an 8mm bolt screw will go in there. And the idea is that that screws into the engine block on either side of the injector. That then goes down and turns round, and the eccentric foot at the bottom will then locate in a slot in the injector body, and then when you tighten that down, it pushes against the top of that and pulls the whole thing up. That's the theory. So better see how that theory holds up in practice, I suppose. So what have I done here? Well, I've taken a fairly long 8mm bolt, I've extended the threads up it using a die in the die holder, and I've taken the end down to what should be .1. So this is the little extraction tools in place. Down there is the injector. I've screwed the studs in the bottom, and I'm now in the process of tightening these up. You can just about at the bottom see the lobe going into the slot in the injector, and that's starting to just pull the injector out of its housing. As you see down here now, the injector is out. I've spent a bit of time cleaning up around it. It was quite a mess. This pipe down here will be renewed, and there's the two tools, like the tool I made. One goes either side. There are the two studs that screw in through the holes here. I've cleaned up the injector, and this is the culprit. As you can see, it's fairly well, there's actually a groove down the side there, and that's its replacement. That's an awful lot of work for a little bit of copper. And that's the injector back in place. I have to say, it went back in an awful lot more easily than it came out. So 2 screws in there. New high pressure fuel line will go there to replace that one. Put the return pipes back on and then tighten it down. And this is the tool that I bought, and it's basically a slide hammer, and the idea is you screw that into the copper ring, get it in there nice and tight, and give it a tap with the slide part of the hammer, and it pulls the whole thing out, which I have to say it did extremely easily. So very pleased with that little purchase, but even more pleased with this. Having taken that out and taken some measurements, I'd actually alter these very slightly. This is 3mm stick out, and it could go up to 5, so about 4.5 would be ideal, and I could make it 3.5mm rather than 3mm. But never having done it before, it was a bit of a guess, so not too unhappy with that. I'll add one little piece to this, and this is a slight bit of bodgery to get a vacuum down the injector hole. Piece of 15mm copper pipe, gaffer taped to a piece of hose, which is gaffer taped to the end of the Henry vacuum cleaner. There we go. That gives a nice strong pull and goes all the way down to the bottom of the injector hole and pulls out all the rubbish that you dig out while you're cleaning it up. So that was probably my best bit of work for the day. Well, I hope you enjoyed your brief visit to Dad's shed today. Thank you very much for watching. And this is the item that we were making, or items. So utilising a couple of bolts that I happen to have, 8mm, some scrap steel, and it's not very nice stuff that, and some 1/4 inch turned down to 6mm for the basic studs. Is there anything I would do differently? Well, now I've actually had the injector out and I can measure it, yes, I would increase that diameter, and the offset could increase by up to 5mm. That would actually mean if you made it slightly more than that, about 5.5mm, it would then lock in place. So that's one thing I would do. I'd make that bigger. I'd also drill through much further 8mm clearance, in fact it's probably about 8.2mm, and then I'd drill and tap 10mm at the top, make a shortened 10mm bolt, which I drill and tap through 8mm. So I've only got a few threads at the top which are locked in, and that would then enable me to go much further down here. That would save me using something like that as an extender, which I dropped down inside there. So that will then go only out a little way. But it worked. It's probably an hour's work in here, all told, and then the time it's taken me to do the work on the car. As I say, without that tool, I could not get the injector out to replace the seal. Yes, I can buy one, I have now found, but they're £60–70 depending where you get them from, and it meant I needed to go and get them, and having started taking the car apart, that was a non-starter, literally. So that got me out of a big hole. A little bit of time in the workshop, a little bit of thinking time. It means that next time I've already got the extractors, although I'd probably actually remake them slightly to make them a little bit easier to use. Thanks for watching, hope you've enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe if you have, and leave any comments you want in the comments section. And it's goodbye from Dad's Shed.